Derek Walsh opened his eyes to darkness that felt wrong. The air tasted metallic and recycled. Nothing like the crisp mountain atmosphere he remembered from moments ago. Or had it been moments? His head pounded as he tried to sit up, only to find himself pressed against a transparent barrier that hummed with energy. Panic came first, then training took over. He was a wildlife biologist, spent 15 years tracking animals through Colorado's backcountry. Observation before reaction had saved his life more than once. Derek forced himself to breathe slowly and assess his surroundings. The cell was maybe 10 feet across, smooth metallic floor beneath him, curved walls made of something like glass, but harder. Beyond the barrier, he could see a corridor bathed in bluish light that pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Definitely not human construction. The angles were wrong, the proportions slightly off in ways that made his eyes hurt if he focused too long. Movement caught his attention. 3 figures approached from down the corridor, and Derek's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The first looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a professor, complete with what appeared to be spectacles perched on its triangular head. The second was vaguely dolphin-shaped, but walked upright on multiple legs, its skin shifting colors as it moved. The third had wings folded against its back and eyes that seemed to see in too many directions at once. The barrier shimmered and became permeable. The insect-like creature stepped forward, and Derek heard a voice inside his head. Not threatening, just matter of fact. Derek Walsh, wildlife specialist, age 37. Taken from observation post in Rocky Mountain National Park during routine collection. Derek managed to croak. His throat felt dry as sand. The dolphin thing rippled its skin in what might have been a shrug. Your species was discovered 6 months ago by Deep Space Probe. Initial surveys indicated concerning characteristics. Apex predator physiology. History of violence. Rapid technological advancement without corresponding ethical development. Derek wanted to argue, but the winged creature continued the explanation. We are the Galactic Consortium. 47-member species dedicated to peaceful coexistence. When we discover new predator species, protocol requires behavioral assessment before contact. You kidnapped me to see if humans are too dangerous. Derek felt anger rising, but pushed it down. Getting emotional wouldn't help. Accurate summary, the insect creature replied. Its mandibles clicked in what might have been approval. You will be placed in controlled habitats with fauna from other worlds. Species deemed too aggressive for integration. Your responses will determine humanity's fate. The dolphin being moved closer to the barrier. If you display typical predator behaviors, territoriality, unprovoked violence, inability to coexist, your species will be quarantined. Earth will be marked as restricted space. And if I pass your test, diplomatic contact, trade, cultural exchange, your species joins galactic civilization. The winged creature's multiple eyes focused on him with uncomfortable intensity. Failure means isolation. Humanity will develop alone, unaware of what exists beyond your solar system. Derek processed this. They were judging all of humanity based on his actions. The weight of that responsibility felt crushing, but something else bothered him more. You said I'll be with creatures you consider too aggressive. What happens to them if they fail your tests? Silence. The 3 aliens exchanged glances that Derek couldn't interpret. Finally, the insect being answered. Permanent containment. Some species cannot be integrated. The safety of peaceful civilizations must be prioritized. So this is a prison, Derek said quietly. You've decided these animals are monsters and locked them away forever. It is necessary, the dolphin creature responded, but Derek detected something in its mental voice. Doubt? Discomfort? They gave him basic supplies. A pack with food that looked like gray paste, but supposedly contained all necessary nutrients. A canteen of water. A translation implant they inserted behind his ear with technology that felt more like a sting than surgery. Environmental suit that adjusted to different atmospheres. No weapons. Violence will result in immediate test failure. The insect being warned. You are being monitored constantly. Every action, every choice recorded, and analyzed. Derek nodded. He understood the rules, even if he disagreed with the game. They led him through corridors that curved in impossible ways, past viewing windows showing habitats he couldn't begin to describe. Alien jungles with purple foliage, methane seas under orange skies, crystalline caves that sang when air passed through them. Each contained creatures the consortium had deemed failures. Finally, they stopped at an airlock. First habitat, the winged creature announced. Twilight forest environment. Moderately dangerous fauna. Survival time for previous subjects averaged 48 hours. Previous subjects from other predator species. Derek asked. Correct. None passed. All displayed aggression, territoriality, or fatal fear responses. The insect being tilted its head. We expect similar results from human specimen. Predators follow predictable patterns. Derek stepped into the airlock. Maybe you've been asking the wrong questions. The door sealed behind him. Ahead, another door slowly opened onto what looked like a forest at dusk. Blue-green bioluminescent plants cast eerie light through dense vegetation. The air that rushed and smelled of earth and something sharper, almost like ozone after a lightning strike. Derek took a deep breath and stepped forward. Somewhere in the artificial twilight, something massive moved through the undergrowth. He heard branches snapping under significant weight, heard a low rumble that vibrated in his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find shelter, to grab a weapon. But Derek had spent his career approaching dangerous animals. He knew that fear and aggression often looked identical from the outside. He knew that most creatures attacked because they were scared, not because they were evil. He moved slowly into the forest, eyes adjusting to the strange light. Tracks in the soft ground showed six-toed prints the size of dinner plates. Whatever made them was big, probably an ambush predator based on the depth and spacing. Behind him, through cameras he couldn't see, the consortium watched and recorded. They expected him to fail, expected him to prove that humans were just another violent species that needed to be contained. Derek smiled grimly. Time to surprise them. The rumbling growl came again, closer now. Derek spotted movement between the trees. Something large and low to the ground, covered in what looked like crystalline spines that caught the bioluminescent light. He stopped walking and very slowly sat down on the forest floor. Okay, he said softly to whatever was watching him. Let's see who you really are. The creature emerged from the bioluminescent undergrowth like a nightmare given form. It stood nearly 8 feet tall at the shoulder, built like someone had merged a grizzly bear with a timber wolf and added armor plating. Crystalline spines ran along its back, each one refracting the blue-green light into rainbow patterns. 6 legs moved with disturbing coordination, and its head featured too many eyes arranged in a pattern that suggested it could see in multiple directions simultaneously. Derek remained sitting, fighting every survival instinct that screamed at him to run. The creature circled him slowly, spines flattened against its body in a posture he recognized despite the alien anatomy. Not aggressive display. Defensive fear. Hey there, Derek said quietly, keeping his voice low and calm. You're scared too, aren't you? The creature stopped circling. Its multiple eyes focused on him with unnerving intensity. Derek noticed scars along its flanks, old wounds that had healed badly. Patches where the crystalline spines were broken or missing entirely. This wasn't some mindless monster. This was a traumatized animal that had been hurt. He slowly reached into his pack, moving with exaggerated care. The creature tensed, muscles coiling beneath armored hide. Derek pulled out one of the gray nutrient bars and very gently tossed it to land about 15 feet away. The creature didn't move toward the food. It watched Derek instead, clearly trying to determine if this was some kind of trap. Smart. Derek had worked with abused dogs that showed the same cautious intelligence. I'm not going to hurt you, Derek continued talking, maintaining the calm tone. I know what it's like to be trapped somewhere you don't want to be. Taken from home without warning. Hours passed. Derek didn't move from his spot except to shift position occasionally, preventing his legs from going numb. The creature maintained its distance, but didn't attack. Didn't leave either. It was curious, Derek realized. Probably hadn't seen many subjects who didn't immediately treat it as a threat. somewhere in the habitat's artificial sky, the light began to change. The bioluminescent plants dimmed slightly, mimicking a deepening twilight. Derek's translation implant chirped softly, and he heard the consortium's voice in his head. Subject has survived 6 hours. No aggressive contact. Razorback specimen showing atypical behavior patterns. So that's what they called it. Razorback. Derek studied the creature with professional interest. High-gravity world adaptation, judging by the muscle density and bone structure. Those spines probably served multiple purposes like heat regulation and defense. The multiple eyes suggested a prey-rich environment where constant vigilance was necessary for survival. Your world must have been beautiful, Derek said to the Razorback. But you miss it. The creature made a sound that the implant couldn't quite translate. Something between a whine and a rumble, pitched low enough to vibrate Derek's sternum. Loneliness. He'd heard that sound before from wolves separated from their pack. Derek took a calculated risk. He lay down on his side, making himself as small and non-threatening as possible. Showed his back to the predator. Every wildlife rehabilitation guide would call this insane, but Derek had learned that sometimes you had to demonstrate trust before you could receive it. Minutes stretched. Derek focused on breathing steadily, projecting calm. He heard the soft sound of massive paws moving through underbrush, coming closer. The Razorback's breath washed over him, hot and smelling of something like cinnamon mixed with copper. Derek didn't move, didn't flinch. A wet nose the size of his fist pressed against his shoulder, sniffing carefully. "Good," Derek whispered. "That's good. See? Just another scared animal trying to figure this out." More time passed. The Razorback settled down about 10 feet away, still watching, but no longer in a defensive crouch. Progress, by the time the habitat lights cycled to full darkness, Derek had managed to move closer, not crowding the creature, just gradually closing distance. He'd tossed more food, established himself as a provider rather than competitor. The Razorback had eaten, which meant it was starting to feel safe. The eye in the darkness lit only by softly glowing plants. Derek noticed something else. The Razorback's breathing was labored on one side. He listened carefully, counting respirations. Definitely struggling. One of those old wounds might have caused internal damage. "You're hurt," Derek said, more to himself than the creature. "And they just stuck you in here without proper treatment." The consortium's voice interrupted. Subject displaying concerning attachment to dangerous specimen. Recommend relocation to next habitat. "No," Derek said firmly, speaking to the monitoring system. "Not until I help. You are not authorized to provide medical intervention." "Then you failed your own test," Derek shot back. "You claim you're studying whether species can be integrated, but you're not giving them what they need to succeed. This creature isn't violent. It's in pain." Silence from the monitors. Derek suspected he'd started an argument among the observers. Over the next day, Derek worked carefully with the Razorback. He used his environmental suit's diagnostic functions to scan for injuries. Found 3 broken ribs that had healed incorrectly, pressing against the lung tissue. Found infection in one of the spine bases. Found evidence of nutritional deficiency, that he couldn't fix everything, but he could help. Derek created poultices from plants in the habitat, testing each one carefully. The translation implant had basic biological databases that helped identify anti-inflammatory and antibiotic properties. He approached the Razorback slowly, showing each step, letting the creature smell everything. The Razorback allowed him to treat the infected spine, allowed him to wrap the ribs with material from his pack, providing support. By the second day, its breathing had improved noticeably. Something changed in the creature's eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding that Derek wasn't like the others who had been placed in this habitat. They hadn't tried to help. They'd only tried to survive. When the consortium finally opened the exit portal, Derek didn't want to leave. He'd formed a bond with the Razorback, earned its trust through patience and care. The creature pressed its massive head against his chest in what was clearly affection. "I have to go," Derek told it quietly. "But I'll make them change things. I promise." As he walked toward the exit, the Razorback followed him to the boundary. It couldn't pass through the energy barrier, but it watched him go with eyes that held far too much intelligence to be dismissed as animal instinct. Derek turned back one last time. You're not a monster. You're just a guardian from a world that needed guardians. They failed you, but I won't forget. The insect being waited at the airlock, its mandibles clicking in agitation. Your behavior deviated significantly from predicted patterns. Analysis requires revision. Good, Derek said. Maybe your predictions are the problem. He stepped through to the next challenge, but something had shifted. The consortium wasn't just testing him anymore. He was testing them. The water felt wrong against Derek's skin, even through the environmental suit. Too thick, too warm in some layers, and freezing cold in others. The breathing apparatus fitted over his face provided oxygen, but couldn't filter out the acidic smell that burned his nostrils. Visibility extended maybe 20 feet before everything dissolved into murky brown-green darkness. Derek floated in what the consortium called a toxic swamp recreation. Massive root systems descended from above like wooden tentacles. Sediment churned with his movements, creating clouds that obscured everything. Somewhere in the depths, something very large was moving in circles. His suit's scanner picked up massive biosignatures. Single organism, approximately 60 feet long, bioelectric signature indicating active nervous system and sensory organs. Temperature variations suggested it was tracking his heat signature. A shape glided past below him, barely visible. Derek caught a glimpse of scales that reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Multiple rows of barbs along a serpentine body built for this murky environment. The Serpent Titan, they'd called it. Responsible for 3 deaths among test subjects from other predator species. Derek forced himself to remain still, drifting with the current. Predators often triggered on movement. The serpent circled again, closer this time. He could see its head now, broad and flat with sensory pits along the jaw. Eyes that should have been focused and alert, but looked cloudy, almost milky. The creature's hunting pattern seemed off. It circled 3 times before committing to an approach, and even then the strike was hesitant, almost exploratory. The barbs along its body glowed with bioluminescence meant to hypnotize prey, but the patterns were irregular, flickering. Derek dove deeper, toward the habitat floor where control panels were embedded in synthetic rock. The serpent followed, but didn't attack. Curious behavior for something supposedly violent and aggressive, he reached the environmental controls and activated the diagnostic display. The water chemistry data made his stomach sink. Methane content at 63%. This was supposed to be a toxic swamp, but the Serpent Titan came from a methane seaworld. The habitat was close, but not quite right, like keeping a saltwater fish in brackish water. Close enough to survive, but not thrive. Derek checked the serpent's last medical scan. Respiratory tissue inflammation. Corneal damage from wrong chemical exposure. Malnutrition despite regular feeding because the food wasn't properly synthesized for its digestive system. The poor creature wasn't aggressive. It was suffering. The serpent approached while he worked, close enough that Derek could see the damage clearly. Chemical burns on its underbelly. Scales that should have been smooth were pitted and rough. Its eyes were coated with a film that must have made seeing nearly impossible. You're not dangerous, Derek said through the breathing apparatus. You're dying slowly and no one noticed. He accessed the control panel's main functions. Adjusting the chemistry would take time, and he'd have to do it gradually to avoid shocking the serpent system. But he could start. The serpent struck without warning, not at Derek, but at his hand near the controls. Barbs scraped against his suit's armored surface. Not hard enough to penetrate, just enough to move his hand away. I'm trying to help, Derek insisted, reaching back for the controls. The serpent pushed against him again, more insistent. Derek suddenly understood. Every other test subject had probably tried to use these controls too. Maybe to create weapons, maybe to escape. The serpent had learned that subjects near the controls meant danger, that he needed a different approach. Derek pulled back from the panel and instead began gathering plants from the habitat floor. Some showed signs of methane-processing bacteria in their root systems. He crushed them carefully, releasing the chemical compounds into the water near the serpent. The creature's reaction was immediate. It moved into the cloud of methane-rich water, gills flaring wide. The bioluminescent patterns along its body began to glow more steadily. Derek had given it a taste of what it needed. Over the next hours, Derek worked methodically. He'd swim to the controls, adjust settings slightly, then retreat before the serpent could react. He'd gather more plants, create more zones of proper chemistry. Slowly, gradually, the habitat's balance shifted. The consortium's voice crackled through his implant. Subject is manipulating test environment. This violates protocol. Your protocol is killing this creature, Derek responded. Look at the medical data. Actually, look at it. You've had this animal in the wrong environment for years. The serpent titan is classified as lethal threat. Environmental parameters were set for containment, not comfort. It's not a threat, Derek argued, watching the serpent navigate the improving water with increasing grace. It's suffering from chemical burns and malnutrition. No wonder it attacks. Imagine being slowly poisoned every day of your life. He reached the main control panel again. This time the serpent approached, but didn't push him away. It was learning that his interventions made things better. Trust slowly building. Derek increased the methane content to 75%. Adjusted mineral balance. Modified the feeding system to synthesize proteins that matched the serpent's homeworld biology. The changes would take hours to fully implement, but already the water felt different. The serpent's eyes began to clear as proper chemistry reduced inflammation. Its movements became more fluid, more natural. Derek watched it swim in wider circles, exploring its habitat like it was seeing clearly for the first time in years. Then something went wrong. An alarm sounded through the water. One of Derek's adjustments had triggered a cascade failure in the filtration system. Temperature began spiking, rising fast enough to boil the water in spots. Derek dove for the emergency shutdown, but the controls were on the far side of the habitat. He'd never make it in time. The water around him started heating uncomfortably even through the suit. The serpent moved faster than Derek would have believed possible. It grabbed him gently in its jaws, not biting, just holding, and surged through the water toward cooler depths. Found a thermal vent pumping cold water and positioned Derek in the flow, protecting him from the heating zones. Above them, automated systems kicked in and stabilized the temperature. Crisis averted. But the message was clear. The serpent titan had just saved his life. Derek reached out slowly and touched the serpent's head. Its eyes, now clear and bright, watched him with unmistakable intelligence. This wasn't some mindless predator. It was aware, capable of gratitude and sacrifice. The serpent brought him glowing plants that it had learned were safe to eat. Brought him to pockets of perfectly balanced water where he could rest comfortably. When maintenance drones entered to repair the systems, the serpent positioned itself between Derek and the machines, protective. The consortium went silent for a long time. Derek suspected their monitoring teams were having intense debates. Finally, the dolphin being's voice returned. Analysis indicates impossible behavioral modification. Requesting explanation. It was never broken, Derek said simply. You just never gave it what it needed. The moment someone cared, it responded. When an exit portal opened, Derek hesitated. The serpent pressed against him one last time, a gesture of clear affection. Derek pressed back, wishing he could stay longer. They'll fix things now, he told the creature. I'll make sure they do. As he left the aquatic habitat, Derek noticed something new in the monitoring staff's expressions. The insect being's mandibles were still, not clicking in agitation. The dolphin creature's colors had shifted to patterns Derek's implant identified as contemplative. He'd just proven their second, irredeemable predator was nothing of the sort. Heat hit Derek like a physical wall when he stepped into the desert habitat. Twin artificial suns blazed overhead, turning red sand into a shimmering sea of thermal waves. Rock formations jutted from the landscape like broken teeth, offering minimal shade. His suit's temperature regulation kicked into overdrive immediately. The consortium had been brief with their introduction this time. 6 specimens, pack hunters from Volcanic World, classified as irredeemably violent and incapable of socialization. Previous test subjects had survived an average of 18 hours. Derek spotted them within minutes. They moved along a ridgeline about 200 yards distant. 6 creatures that looked like velociraptors crossed with armored lizards. Each stood roughly 5 feet tall, covered in overlapping plates that probably protected against the volcanic heat of their homeworld. They moved with the fluid coordination of experienced pack hunters. They'd already seen him. Derek recognized the behavior immediately. 3 took high positions on rocks, while 2 circled wide to cut off potential escape routes. The 6th, slightly larger and with more scarring, watched from the center. Alpha, probably. This was textbook pack hunting strategy. Derek found a defensible position between 2 large rocks and started gathering materials. He had maybe an hour before the suns reached their peak intensity. He needed fire. Predators from volcanic worlds might respect it, might see it as territorial marking. His hands worked quickly, using the suit's basic tools to create spark-generating friction. The pack watched with obvious intelligence, adjusting positions as they observed his actions. They weren't rushing in. They were analyzing, planning. Fire caught in dry vegetation Derek had piled. Smoke rose in the still air. The pack immediately shifted their approach pattern, giving the flames wider berth. Respect or caution either worked. Night came fast in the habitat. Temperature plummeted from over 100 degrees to below freezing within an hour. Derek huddled near his fire while the pack circled just beyond the light. He could see their eyes reflecting orange, watching, waiting that eye in the firelight. Derek noticed something. The pack was thin, not just lean from hunting, but malnourished. Their movements showed the careful energy conservation of creatures living on insufficient calories. The habitat fed them regularly according to the data. So why were they starving? Dawn brought brutal heat again. Derek's water supply was limited. He needed to find sources in the habitat or he'd be dead in days. The pack needed water too, he realized. They'd been hunting him toward the northern rocks, which likely meant water was in the opposite direction. Derek made a decision. He extinguished his defensive fire and started walking south, directly away from where the pack had been hurting him. Risky, but if they were just trying to kill him, they had all night. The pack followed openly now, no longer hiding their pursuit. Derek kept walking, scanning for signs of water or edible plants. His suit's scanner picked up biological signatures in the sand. Small creatures burrowed deep to escape the heat that he stopped and dug carefully. Found something like a cross between a lizard and a crab, about the size of his fist. Its shell held moisture. Derek's nutritional analyzer confirmed it was safe for him to eat. More importantly, the pack had probably evolved to hunt exactly this kind of prey. Derek killed it quickly and efficiently, then stepped back, leaving the body in plain sight. The pack approached cautiously. The scarred alpha reached the kill first, sniffed it, then looked directly at Derek with unmistakable surprise. It picked up the offering and retreated to share with the pack. They ate with desperate efficiency, definitely starving. Derek started hunting more of the burrowing creatures, creating a pile. The pack watched him work, their posture gradually shifting from predatory to curious. The by midday, Derek had caught 8 of the creatures. He kept 2 for himself and left 6 arranged in obvious offering. The pack took them but didn't leave. Instead, they began hunting alongside him, their superior senses finding prey he'd miss. Derek understood suddenly. The consortium had been feeding them wrong. Whatever synthetic food they provided wasn't meeting the pack's nutritional needs. They needed live prey with specific chemical compositions from their homeworld ecosystem. Without it, they were slowly starving despite full feeding schedules. One pack member caught his attention. Smaller than the others, moving with a pronounced limp. Old injury, badly healed. The pack was supporting it, sharing food, slowing their pace. Family. They were protecting their own. Derek approached slowly with his medical supplies visible. The pack tensed, but the alpha made a chirping sound that stopped them from attacking. Derek reached the injured one and knelt carefully. Chemical burns on one leg, similar to what he'd seen on the Serpent Titan. Wrong environmental chemistry again. That he cleaned the wound with supplies from his pack, applied antibacterial gel, wrapped it in supportive material. The injured pack member tolerated his touch, trembling but not fighting. The alpha watched the entire process intently. When Derek finished, he sat back and waited. The alpha approached, sniffed his hands, his face, his equipment. Then it did something remarkable. It went to a cluster of rocks and used its claws to expose a hidden water seep. Not enough for humans to notice, but the pack had found every tiny water source in the habitat. They were teaching him how to survive here. The dynamic had completely flipped. They no longer saw him as prey or competitor. They saw him as pack. Over the next days, Derek learned their communication patterns. Chirps for danger, low rumbles for contentment, clicking sounds for coordination during hunts. They included him in their formations, positioning him in the center where he'd be safest during the brutal heat of day. The scarred alpha brought him a plant root one evening, dropping it at his feet. Derek's analyzer showed it had medicinal properties for reducing inflammation. The pack had been watching him favor his left ankle and found medicine. When maintenance drones entered the habitat, the pack's response was immediate and aggressive. They surrounded Derek protectively, snarling at the machines. The alpha positioned itself directly between Derek and perceived threats, ready to fight. The consortium's voice interrupted. Pack behavior indicates unprecedented social bonding with test subject. Data contradicts all previous assessments. Because you only saw what you expected to see, Derek responded. You classified them as violent without asking why they were fighting. They're not monsters. They're a family trying to survive in an environment that's slowly killing them. Derek spent his final day in the habitat fixing what he could. He adjusted feeding protocols to include live prey with proper chemical composition, identified water sources the consortium had missed, created cooling stations using his remaining supplies. The pack understood he was leaving when the exit portal opened. They didn't try to stop him, but the alpha followed him to the boundary. It pressed its scarred head against Derek's chest, a gesture of trust and farewell. You're survivors, Derek told them. Don't let anyone tell you different. As he walked through the portal, Derek heard the pack's chorus of farewell chirps. They called him Pack Brother in their own way. The consortium's test was supposed to prove predators couldn't cooperate across species. Instead, it was proving the exact opposite. The insect being weighted with what Derek had learned to recognize as agitation. You have altered 3 test environments significantly. This invalidates controlled study parameters. Good, Derek said. Your controls were flawed from the start. You were studying trauma responses and calling them inherent nature. That's not science. That's confirmation bias. He didn't wait for a response. The final habitat waited, and Derek suspected it would be the hardest test yet. Gravity pressed down on Derek the moment he entered the final habitat. Everything felt 40% heavier, including his own body. His legs trembled with the effort of simply standing. The environment looked like a mountain range sculpted by something angry, all sharp crystalline formations and vertical cliffs that sparkled with embedded minerals. The consortium had given him a longer briefing this time. The Dreadclaw had killed 17 people over 8 years. Military personnel trained soldiers from species across the consortium. It was 12 feet of armored muscle, adapted to a super-Earth with crushing gravity and megapredators. Nothing had ever survived more than 3 hours in its territory. Derek found a relatively flat area between crystal spires and sat down heavily. The extra gravity was exhausting. Every movement required significant effort. No wonder the Dreadclaw was so dangerous. It had evolved in this kind of pressure. Here, it would be impossibly fast and strong that he didn't have to wait long. The ground vibrated with heavy footsteps. Something massive was approaching through the crystal maze. Derek's suit scanner went crazy with biosignature alerts. Whatever was coming was huge. The Dreadclaw rounded a crystal formation and Derek's breath caught. It looked like evolution had taken a bear, a gorilla, and an armored dinosaur and created something that could dominate any environment. Bone plates covered its body like natural armor. Muscles rippled under thick hide. Its head featured a jaw that could bite through steel and eyes that blazed with fierce intelligence that IT charged without hesitation. Derek had no time to run. No time to think. He dove behind a crystal spire as the Dreadclaw's shoulder smashed through stone like it was foam. Shards exploded in every direction. Derek scrambled away, but the extra gravity made him slow, clumsy. The creature was incredibly fast despite its size. It cut off Derek's escape route, forcing him toward a dead-end canyon. Derek recognized the tactic. This wasn't mindless violence. It was strategic hunting. The Dreadclaw was hurting him, controlling the battlefield. Derek used the crystal formations as cover, ducking and weaving through narrow gaps the Dreadclaw couldn't follow. But he was tiring quickly. The gravity was draining his strength with every step. His heart pounded dangerously hard. He couldn't keep this up. He stumbled, fell hard against jagged crystal. Pain exploded across his ribs. The Dreadclaw loomed over him. One massive clawed hand raised a strike. Derek had nowhere left to run, but the strike didn't fall. The Dreadclaw stood there, breathing heavily, staring down at him with those intelligent eyes. Derek saw something in that gaze that stopped his panic. Not rage, not bloodlust, sadness. Deep, profound sadness. "You don't want to do this," Derek gasped out. "Do you?" The Dreadclaw's eyes widened slightly. It took a step back, clearly surprised. Derek's translation implant activated, picking up low-frequency vocalizations that translated into his head. "You understand me?" The voice was deep, resonant, tinged with disbelief. "Yes," Derek said, pushing himself to sitting position despite the pain. "I understand you. How long since someone actually listened?" The Dreadclaw's armored body seemed to sag. 8 years, 3 months, 14 days. Every subject they send comes armed, comes afraid, comes ready to fight or run. None stopped to listen. "I'm listening now," Derek said quietly. The creature moved to a flat rock and sat, almost carefully. Up close, Derek could see old scars beneath the armor plating. Wounds that spoke of desperate fights, of isolation and pain. "My name was Guardian of the Soft Ones on my world," the Dreadclaw said through the translator. "I protected young of my species, defended nursery grounds from megapredators. The consortium came, saw my size and strength, assumed I was the threat I defended against. They took you from your home," Derek said. Understanding clicked into place. Separated you from those you were protecting. The young ones died without guardians. The Dreadclaw's voice carried such grief. "I know this. I feel it. For 8 years, I have been called monster. For 8 years, I have tried to make them understand. But fear makes them deaf." Derek slowly stood, ignoring the gravity's pull. "I'm not deaf. Tell me about them. The ones you protected." For hours, the Dreadclaw spoke. It described a world of immense danger where its species served as living shields for their vulnerable young. Described nursery caves where baby creatures grew slowly, helpless against the mega-predators that roamed. Described the honor of being chosen as guardian, the responsibility of protecting life. Derek shared his own stories. Talked about grizzly bears protecting cubs, elephants guarding their young, the universal drive to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. The Dreadclaw listened with intense focus, starved for connection after years of isolation. "The others who came here," Derek asked carefully, "why did you kill them?" "They came with weapons," the Dreadclaw explained. "Came to prove themselves against the monster. I tried to communicate, but they only heard roaring. When they attacked, I defended myself. The consortium saw only violence, never saw that I was giving them chances to stop, to listen." Derek looked at the massive creature with new understanding. "You're not a predator. You're a protector. But they trapped you in a cage and sent prey to test you, then blamed you when you acted like a guardian defending territory." "Accurate," the Dreadclaw rumbled. "You are the first to see this." Over the following days, Derek and the Dreadclaw formed an unlikely bond. The creature showed surprising gentleness despite its terrifying appearance. It brought Derek food, remembered his weaker tolerance for the high gravity, created sheltered resting spots. In return, Derek talked for hours, providing the social contact the Dreadclaw had been denied. The Dreadclaw demonstrated its true nature by protecting Derek when part of the habitat's crystal ceiling collapsed during a scheduled maintenance cycle. It shielded him with its own armored body, taking impacts that would have crushed Derek. When the danger passed, it carefully checked him for injuries with surprising delicacy. "Why protect me?" Derek asked. "I'm just another test subject." "You are soft one who listens," the Dreadclaw replied simply. "Protecting soft ones is what I am. What I have always been." The consortium's observers had gone completely silent. Derek suspected the live feeds were being watched by every member of their leadership. They were witnessing their most dangerous prisoner acting as gentle guardian to a human. When the exit portal opened, Derek didn't want to leave. The Dreadclaw had become a friend, someone who understood what it meant to be judged unfairly. "They'll have to acknowledge the truth now," Derek told the massive creature. "You're not what they claimed you were." "Will you speak for me?" the Dreadclaw asked. "Will you tell them what you have learned?" "I'll do better than that," Derek promised. "I'll make them answer for what they've done. To you, to all the others." The Dreadclaw gently touched Derek's shoulder with one massive claw. "You're a good guardian for your species. Protect them well." Derek walked through the portal with determination burning in his chest. He'd passed their tests, but they'd failed his. Time to face the consortium and demand answers. The council chamber was massive enough to make Derek feel insignificant, which he suspected was intentional. Representatives from 47 species filled curved seating that rose in tiers around a central platform where he stood. Some were familiar forms, humanoid or mammalian. Others defied easy description, creatures of energy or crystalline structure or biological configurations that hurt to look at directly. The insect being who'd monitored Derek's journey stood nearby, mandibles clicking with nervous energy. The dolphin creature occupied a water-filled observation tank. The winged observer perched on a specialized stand. All three looked uncomfortable, which gave Derek small satisfaction. A being that looked like living starlight spoke first, its voice translated through Derek's implant. "Human Derek Walsh, you have completed the behavioral assessment. Results are inconsistent with all previous data. Explain." "I'd be happy to," Derek said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "But first, I want to show you something." He activated the portable display unit they provided, pulling up medical scans and environmental data he'd compiled. "The Razorback in Habitat 1. You classified it as violently aggressive. But look at these scans. Broken ribs, chronic pain, nutritional deficiencies. It wasn't aggressive. It was suffering." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Derek continued. "The Serpent Titan, labeled lethal predator. Your habitat had wrong chemical composition, causing constant chemical burns and progressive blindness. The moment conditions improved, aggression vanished completely." He pulled up more data. "The pack in the desert, starving despite regular feeding because your synthetic food lacked nutrients from their native ecosystem. They weren't hunting me. They were desperate." Derek let that sink in before showing his final evidence. "And the Dreadclaw, 17 kills over 8 years. You called it your most dangerous specimen, but it was a guardian species, protective by nature. Every subject you sent came armed and afraid. The Dreadclaw was defending itself against what it perceived as threats." A reptilian representative hissed from the upper tiers. "These are rationalizations. Predator species demonstrate inherent violence. Our protocols have protected the consortium for millennia. Your protocols created the violence you feared," Derek shot back. "You took traumatized individuals, stuck them in wrong environments, denied them proper care, then blamed them when they acted traumatized. That's not science. That's systematic abuse." The starlight beings glow-dimmed thoughtfully. "You claim our entire assessment methodology is flawed." "Completely," Derek confirmed. "You're testing trauma responses and calling them species characteristics. You're judging beings based on their worst moments under your worst conditions. It's like judging all humans based on how we act when we're starving, in pain, and terrified." A crystalline entity chimed from the far side of the chamber. "If your theory is correct, why did previous test subjects fail?" "They had same opportunities for compassion. Because they came from predator species you'd already labeled as failures," Derek explained. "They were fighting to prove their own species weren't monsters. They approached the habitats as challenges to overcome, not beings to understand. They were trying to survive your test, not see past it. The dolphin creature's colors shifted to patterns Derek's implant identified as deep consideration. You are suggesting we have been perpetuating confirmation bias on galactic scale? Yes, Derek said simply. You expect violence, so you create conditions that produce violence, then use that violence to justify your expectations. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Silence fell across the chamber. Derek could see representatives conferring quietly, their various forms of communication creating a background hum of discussion. The insect being stepped forward. We have reviewed full monitoring data from all habitats. Human Derek Walsh's interactions produced measurable behavior changes in every specimen. Changes that persisted after his departure. We cannot ignore this evidence. Show them, Derek urged. Show the council what's happening in the habitats right now. Holographic displays flickered to life above the chamber. The Razorback was actually playing with enrichment object staff had finally provided. The Serpent Titan was communicating with aquatic researchers through translator systems. The pack was cooperating with handlers during feeding times. Most striking, the Dreadclaw was carefully tending to plants in its habitat, creating a garden. These are not behaviors of irredeemable predators, Derek said quietly. These are behaviors of intelligent beings who finally received proper care. An avian representative spoke up, voice sharp. Even if we accept your analysis, the risk remains. These species are capable of violence. That capability threatens peaceful civilizations. Every species is capable of violence, Derek countered. Herbivores have killed plenty throughout Earth's history. Capability isn't the same as inevitability. You're confusing having claws with wanting to use them. The starlight being pulsed brighter. What do you propose? Derek had been preparing for this question. Transform this facility from a prison into a proper integration center. Provide correct environments, proper medical care, actual rehabilitation. Judge species based on their potential, not their worst moments. And most importantly, stop sending armed subjects into habitats as tests. Send teachers. Send healers. Send those who understand that strength includes choosing not to fight. Debate erupted across the chamber. Arguments flew in dozens of languages, creating a cacophony that the translation system struggled to process. Derek stood in the center of it all, waiting. Finally, the starlight being raised appendages for silence. This council requires time to deliberate. Human Derek Walsh, you will wait. Hours passed. Derek was given quarters and food while the consortium argued. Through the windows, he could see the orbital station's vast habitats, each one holding creatures labeled as failures. He thought about the Dreadclaw's question. Would he speak for them? He already had, but now came the waiting to see if anyone listened. The summons came as artificial night fell across the station. Derek returned to the council chamber to find the representatives looking exhausted but resolved. We have reached decision, the starlight being announced. Your evidence is too substantial to dismiss. Beginning immediately, this facility will be redesigned as integration center. Species will receive individualized assessment and proper care. The term irredeemable predator is hereby removed from all official documentation. Relief washed through Derek. And the beings already here, they will be first to benefit from new protocols. The dolphin creature responded. Those showing progress toward integration will receive support for eventual return to home worlds or relocation to appropriate environments. Those unable to return will receive permanent quality care. What about Earth? Derek asked. What about humanity? The insect being's mandibles clicked, and what Derek had learned was their version of a smile. Humanity will receive provisional contact status. You, Derek Walsh, will serve as first ambassador. Your species will be monitored through partnership rather than surveillance. Partnership means both sides have something to offer, Derek said carefully. What does humanity bring to this consortium? The starlight being's glow softened. You have shown us our blindness. Your species possesses capacity for empathy that crosses biological barriers. You see individuals where we saw categories. This perspective is valuable beyond measure. They offered him a position as Chief Xenobiological Relations Specialist. His job would be helping redesign contact protocols, training others to see past fear and prejudice, ensuring that future first contacts didn't repeat the mistakes made here. Derek accepted on one condition. The Razorback, the Serpent Titan, the Pack, the Dreadclaw, they come to Earth with me. They deserve to see what proper integration looks like. They deserve freedom. The Council agreed. Over the following weeks, Derek worked with teams from across the consortium to prepare. The creatures from his test were evaluated, treated, and slowly introduced to the idea of new worlds. The Dreadclaw would come to Earth to work with wildlife protection programs. The Razorback would help establish cross-species communication protocols. The Serpent Titan wanted to explore Earth's oceans. The Pack expressed interest in conservation work. The day Derek's ship approached Earth, he stood in the observation deck with the Dreadclaw beside him. The massive Guardian placed one careful claw on Derek's shoulder, the gesture now familiar and comfortable. "Your world is beautiful," the Dreadclaw rumbled. "Soft ones are fortunate to have Guardian like you." Derek smiled. "We're all Guardians now, protecting each other, learning from each other. That's what the consortium should have been from the start." Behind them, representatives from dozens of species gathered. Some came to learn, others to teach, all committed to building something better than what existed before. The test that was meant to judge humanity had instead revolutionized how the galaxy approached difference and danger. Earth's blue curve filled the view screen. Derek thought about the impossible journey that brought him here, about the beings labeled as monsters who became friends, about the power of choosing understanding over fear. The Razorback, Serpent Titan, the Pack, and the Dreadclaw would walk on Earth soon. They'd prove to humanity and the galaxy that being predator didn't mean being enemy, that strength and gentleness could coexist, that the greatest test wasn't whether you could survive violence, but whether you could choose compassion instead. Derek Walsh, wildlife biologist from Colorado, had been taken to prove humanity was too dangerous for contact. Instead, he'd proven that danger and decency weren't opposites. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was offer trust to those everyone else feared. The ship began its descent. A new chapter was beginning, not just for humanity, but for every species that had been judged before being understood. The Galactic Zoo had tested one human. The animals hadn't failed. The test itself had failed, and in that failure, something far better was born.